Alright, Ronan MMA, welcome back to the channel. Now, as you can see, the setup is not yet complete, but doesn't matter, the show must go on. We are here to preview, and I am going to give my picks for the entirety of UFC 290. I'm going to start with the first fight of the night, as per usual. Move our way up. I'm going to try to get through the earlier fights as quickly as I can so I can spend time on what we are all here to talk about, the main event, the co-main event, things like that. Before we get into it, like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. And I will preface, some fights have been changed or added last minute, and because I have been moving, I have not had the time that I would typically like to take to make proper picks. So some of these, just full disclosure, I will be shooting from the hip for, okay? And others, I know the fighters well enough, and I know what they do well and what they don't do well and things like that, to, I think, give a pretty accurate pick. We are going to start with KIRK versus Esteban RIBOVICS. I will be going with Esteban RIBOVICS. I think he's a very well-rounded young guy, okay? He's got 6 KOs, 5 subs. He's only ever lost once by decision in his UFC debut against Loic Radzhabov, who did just get finished pretty brutally, but before that was a pretty promising guy. He's a decent fighter all around, and that's definitely a tough out for your UFC debut, especially a young guy who probably came from that Samurai Fight House organization, as many of the Argentinians did. Okay, KIRK is also pretty well rounded, but he was finished in his last fight against Damon Jackson. Damon Jackson is pretty good, but he's not fantastic. And while he might be a little more established in the UFC's featherweight division, or, well, he has fought in the featherweight division, which means he's probably a little bit smaller. This fight is taking place at lightweight, but I think that Loic Radzhabov, not getting finished by him in your debut is a little bit more impressive than getting finished by Damon Jackson, who fought Dan Ige at featherweight, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, I think this is going to be a pretty awesome opening fight. I think it was placed perfectly on the card to kick things off. I would imagine somebody's going to get finished. And while KIRK looked really good against Amir Khani, I feel like, it doesn't take... You don't have to be incredible. Amir Khani's only good at one thing. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of like fighting a Kron Gracie or somebody like that. Like, you don't have to worry about any strikes whatsoever. You got to worry about him trying to take you down and submit you, and similar to Claudio Puelles with Dan Hooker, it is what it is, man. These guys aren't MMA fighters, really. They're more jiu-jitsu practitioners who want to compete in MMA. But regardless, I'm going to be going with Esteban RIBOVICS. I would imagine there is a finish of some sorts. But moving on to Shannon Ross versus Jesus Aguilar. I'm going to be going with the odds makers here, and I'm picking Jesus or Jesus, whatever, dude. Aguilar. Shannon Ross has been finished twice so far in the UFC, and I think he maybe just got here a little too late in his career. And also, his record is that of a woman's MMA fighter, okay, which is not impressive to see for a man. Now, Aguilar's only loss since 2015 was to Tatsuro Taira, who is fucking incredible. Okay, so I'm not going to fault him too much for losing to Tatsuro Taira, since he's incredible on the ground and has basically finished every single person since he's been in the UFC. And Jesus Aguilar typically likes to get things done by submission, so if you're going to try and play that game with a guy like Tatsuro Taira, that is just something that will happen 9 times out of 10. Okay, but I'm going to trust in Jesus Aguilar to catch a sub on Shannon Ross. Moving on to Cameron Saaiman versus Terrence Mitchell. I will be going with Cameron Saaiman here. I think he is very good technically. I think that if you were to look at him and Dricus du Plessis, they're almost complete opposites in terms of technique-wise. And I'm not trying to shit on Dricus du Plessis, my South African brothers, okay? But Cameron Saaiman's much more technically sound, much less reckless. The only problem with him is and I hope he can get this under control, is he seems to have a small issue with kicking nuts and things like that, right? Like, I think he's gotten a point deducted in 2 fights now, or at least 1. But I know that he's committed quite a few, they may be accidental, but quite a few fouls. I think this is probably the perfect opponent for him. He's going to be getting a showcase performance, or the UFC hopes so. And I mean, yeah, as I said, if he can just not get point deductions, he should be able to get this one done. I could see him pulling off a finish, because even in this way, he is a little bit like Dricus du Plessis, and I can't remember who he was fighting, but there was a fight where he was in quite a bit of trouble on multiple occasions, and he ended up getting the finish, I think, late in the 3rd round. And I think it might have been the fight, where he did get a point deducted. So it was pretty, crucial that he did get a finish and he was able to. So I'm going to trust in Cameron Saaiman to get the job done against Terrence Mitchell, probably by submission after hurting Terrence Mitchell on the feet. Hopefully he can keep his feet away from the nuts of Terrence Mitchell. Okay, moving on, we are going to get to Vitor Petrino versus Marcin Prachnio. Dude. Ah, man. Prachnio was supposed to be very good. And he's had a few lackluster performances. But I think I might be picking the under. I'm going to do this a couple times on this card. And again, to be fair, I'm shooting from the hips. Or shooting from the hip on a few of these anyways. But regardless, I think I'm gonna pick Prachnio. Okay, Vitor Petrino's 8-0. He's very young, right? Only has a decision win over Anton Turkalj since he's been in the UFC, who, in my opinion, is a garbage, cheating ass bitch. Okay, and I don't fucking like that guy at all. And I feel like if you're legit, you could finish that motherfucker. Okay, dude got finished by Jailton Almeida, who obviously is incredible, but regardless, and I'm talking about Anton Turkalj here. I don't know how they got this guy. I don't understand why he's such a massive favorite. I guess it's based off of Prachnio's like last few performances or what, but you know, I'm not seeing it, man. That's a huge number to put on a guy who has only beat Anton Turkalj in the UFC. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy. Basically, no UFC level experience. Even his fights before the UFC, right? A dude that he fought, I have here in my notes. A guy that he fought, and this was fairly fucking recently. This was not like 10 years ago. At the beginning of his career, he fought a guy who was 1-17, 0-6. Multiple guys making their debuts. Not all that impressive to have an 8-0 record when you're fighting guys like that. It should kind of be expected if you're any good. So I don't know that his record is like, it's not as impressive as it looks, man. Whereas Prachnio, he has fought multiple times in the UFC, and while he's fucking 3-4 in the UFC, the guys he has been fighting are way better than the guys that Vitor Petrino has been fighting. And at -275 for a guy who's got one UFC fight and before that was fighting guys with a 1-17 record, I would never take that number, and I'm actually going to go with Marcin Prachnio here. I don't know how he gets the job done, but I just think experience and, you know, basically experience and the fact that he's fought way better competition, which goes hand in hand with experience. So regardless, Marcin Prachnio over Vitor Petrino, the big favorite. Moving on up to Jimmy Crute versus Alonzo Menifield. No, we're not. See, now this was one where I'm going to be shooting from the hips here, but I'm pretty confident in my pick. Catchweight bout between Tatsuro Taira and Edgar, dude. Pardon me. CHAIREZ, I don't fucking know. He's Mexican, so I'm not sure how to pronounce it that quite correctly. I'm going to be going with Tatsuro Taira here. I think he's very, very good, and I don't know much about the other guy, but I just... Basically, anytime I see Tatsuro Taira fighting somebody who's perhaps outside the top 10, I'm going to have to go with him. And even some guys in the top 10. But Tatsuro Taira, very, very, very talented on the ground. Controls guys who we've seen, you know, dominate and control other guys that are very good. So I'm going to have to be going with Tatsuro Taira here. Moving on up to, here we are, Jimmy Crute versus Alonzo Menifield. This was the fight that I had next to my notes, okay? I'm going to pick Jimmy Crute, right? These guys fought to a draw last time, and in my opinion, the only reason it was able to go to a draw was because Jimmy Crute makes some of the worst fucking decisions I have ever seen in my life in a fight. The guy is an incredible, phenomenal grappler. Decides to try and strike with a big, giant, explosive black man in Alonzo Menifield, which is just quite strange to me. I don't know why he would do that when he has such a clear advantage on the ground. So I'm going to trust that his coaches have given him a good scolding and perhaps a lashing to assume that he's not going to try and do that. Okay? I don't think he's going to try and strike with Alonzo Menifield, or at least I hope not. Okay? And if he does in this fight and perhaps gets knocked out or something, I've lost all fucking hope in Jimmy Crute, and it would be pretty clear to me that he has an extra chromosome. But however, Alonzo Menifield, old, Not that good. Kind of been carried by his power, which is something that we see typically at the heavier weight classes, right? Like at bantamweight, your power is not going to carry you. At light heavyweight, at heavyweight, your power can kind of carry you, as proven by guys like Derek Lewis and stuff like that. So I'm going to be going with Jimmy Crute here to hopefully finish, perhaps like a Kimura of some sorts, if he uses his brain and grapples Alonzo Menifield, as opposed to trying to stand and trade with an explosive black man, okay? Moving on up to Yasmin Jauregui versus Denise Gomes, or Gomes. Okay, I am not quite sure why the odds are what they are. Yasmin Jauregui, or however the fuck you say her name, is a minus 400. Denise Gomes has only lost to Loma Lookboonmee in the UFC, at least, who's a very good striker. And if you're going to stand and trade with a girl like Loma Lookboonmee, then it's kind of almost expected that you'll lose. She's like a very, relative to women's MMA, she's a very high level Muay Thai striker. Yasmin Jauregui, I mean, why is she such a large favorite? Actually, let's take a look at that, because I'm curious. That doesn't make really much sense to me. She's 10-0. Okay, fair enough. I mean, that's good, but that's good for a woman, for a whammon, for sure, dude. She's only got 2 fights in the UFC, one to Yasmin Lucindo, who's okay, and Estela Nunes, who is not that great. Whereas Denise Gomes, record not as impressive, 7-2, has KO'd Bruna Brazil, lost a decision to Loma Lookboonmee, and those are her only 2 fights in the UFC so far. That's why. They've each only got 2 fights in the UFC. And this is a very riveting part of this video. I do apologize, but I'm not going with a minus 400 based on that. So we're going to go with Denise Gomes, because I'm just going to throw a bunch of fucking underdog picks on this card. Why not, dude? Yeah, I get she's from Mexico, and she's a savage. Denise Gomes, fuck, man, I'm having a hard time with this one. How old are they? 24 years old. Yasmin is 24 years old. Denise Gomes is 23. Not a big difference. What the fuck is going on, dude? I'm not understanding this this rationale here for having this lady at a minus 400. I mean, you know, her first like 5 or 6 opponents are not very good. I'm having a hard time with this one, man. I think I'm going to pick Denise Gomes just because fucking YOLO, dude. That's been a while since you heard that. But I'm not picking a minus 400 in any fucking whammons division, okay, dude? Unless it's like one of the champions, I guess. But regardless, if Zhang Weili was a minus 400, I would pick Zhang Weili. But for fucking 2 relatively unknown whammon, I'm not going with a minus 400, and I just hit my mic, dude. So regardless, moving on up. I can't believe I just spent that much fucking time on a women's strawweight bout. Jack Della Maddalena versus Josiah, whatever the fuck, Harrell. Don't know who the fuck that is. Obviously, I'm going with JDM. That's my boy. I love Jack Della Maddalena. His nose, dude, his nickname should be Captain Hook, because his nose is fucked. But incredible boxing, incredible footwork. We've seen that also. Incredible high fight IQ. Once he gets a guy hurt once he gets a guy hurt and the guy drops to the ground, he is very quick to latch up submissions. Randy Brown is a very tall, lanky guy, somebody who would be relatively hard to control on the ground in a submission effort. Jack Della Maddalena put the squeeze on him, no problems, after fucking him up on the feet with no trouble whatsoever. And it is what it is. Props to this guy, whoever he is, for taking this fight, because this is the very last minute opponent for Jack Della Maddalena, and, you know, opportunity of a lifetime for a guy who, you know, if he beats Jack Della Maddalena here, all of a sudden he's fucking hoisted into the top 15 of the welterweight division. I don't think it will happen. I would imagine that on I just hit my mic for real. I would imagine on fight night, Jack Della Maddalena will be somewhere in the neighborhood of like fucking minus 800. So I don't know that I would bet on it, but I mean, just because the value is shit, but JDM all the way, dude. First round finish. TKO. Moving up. Robbie Lawler versus Nico Price. Another underdog pick here, boys. I'm going with Robbie Lawler, dude. Nico Price is a fucking idiot to me. Okay? Or in my opinion, I think he's a fucking weirdo. And he's extremely inconsistent. And when Cowboy was on his way out, Nico Price was the only one that didn't lose to him. And I know that it was due to a point deduction, but still, that means it was close enough that a point deduction was able to turn that fight into a draw. And I know that Cowboy was pretty graceful, and, you know, I lost, whatever, blah, 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 but fuck that. Nico Price at a minus 260, dude. That guy is way too inconsistent for the shit. Robbie Lawler is a fucking animal, a fucking savage. This is his retirement fight. We love Robbie Lawler, I would imagine. Any fight fan loves Robbie Lawler. And I think that he's going to come out guns a-blazing like an animal. And I don't think that Nico Price has the same power as a guy like Brian Barberena if he's, you know, unleashing on him. I know that Nico Price kind of has like almost like the Tony Ferguson effect where he's got big hands that cause quite a bit of damage on faces sometimes, but I just think that Robbie Lawler is going to know this is his last hurrah. He would much rather go out on a high note than getting beat by a fucking weirdo like Nico Price. So I'm going to go with Robbie Lawler. And again, dude, minus 260 for Nico Price, that's like iffy. He's inconsistent, man, or at least in my opinion. So I'm gonna be picking Robbie here. And dude, let's just take a moment to appreciate Robbie Lawler and what he's done, man. The guy's fucking incredible. He's got so many good fights. It was funny, you know, they kept asking guys at the press conference, oh, what do you think of Robbie Lawler? What's your favorite Robbie Lawler moment? Things like this. And, you know, a lot of them picked the Rory McDonald fight with that stare down. But there are so many fights that you could pick from. Jesus Christ, dude. Robbie Lawler's fight with Cowboy was phenomenal, and it was back when Cowboy was kind of in his prime and had just moved to welterweight and was fucking dudes up. Obviously, his fight with Condit, one of the best ever, regardless of the decision being what it was. Dude, he's got so many good fights, right? Johnny Hendricks fights, I mean, incredible. And just a true vet, and, you know, not just that, but he seems like a really nice guy also. He looks super mean and scary, but then he talks and his voice is kind of not, you wouldn't match the voice with the face if you had to. And he seems like a really down to earth dude. He's never been one for the media and shit like that. He's never changed who he was to try to sell more pay-per-views. People love him because of how he fights, and I feel like that a lot of the times that's how it should be. You know, I'm not shitting on guys that have to talk a little bit to get recognition, but you know that when you've got a fan base like Robbie Lawler and you didn't really talk a whole lot of shit, then you're doing something right. So fucking I love Robbie Lawler, and all the credit in the world to him. Moving on up, Bo Nickel versus Val Woodburn. Okay, I have to pick low Bo Nickel here because fuck, I hate that guy, man. I don't like him. I can't stand when public figures refuse, or I don't know what the correct word would be, but any sort of criticism gets played off as a hater. And I feel like it's the Brendan Schaub effect. I truly feel like Brendan Schaub has had an effect because regardless of how fucking retarded he is, and that guy, dude, you want to talk about extra chromosomes, he's got more than one, right? He's like Downs syndrome. He's got 2 of them, okay? He is an influential figure in the MMA space, or maybe not so much anymore. His views are hurting a little bit, but, you know, I'm sure that for some younger fighters who listen to podcasts and shit like that, he could have an influence on them. And when you hear guys that are super famous just fucking blow off any criticism as haters, you're going to get that same mindset. Low Blow Nickel does the same fucking thing. He goes, everybody wants to see me fail, chip on his shoulder type shit, which I get can be good for a competitive edge. But at the same time, buddy, you fucking need homeboy in the nuts twice because you were having trouble taking him down. and then you got the takedown off of a low blow. Like, that's why people are upset with you. That's why people don't like you. And then your refusal to, like, you refuse to acknowledge it or apologize or be like, I don't know. You know what I mean? He just completely, I don't know, man. Gordon Ryan does the same fucking thing, dude. Anybody, anywhere, anytime giving him criticism, even if it's a fan, which, hey, fuckface, the reason why you make so much money is because of your fans. You know what I mean? It's just haters, B. And it's so fucking cringe and annoying, dude. I appreciate when somebody, you know, like if Bo Nickel would have came out and been like, dude, I didn't mean to knee him in the nuts. It was an accident. I didn't realize, heat of the moment. The ref didn't, whatever. It is what it is. I apologize to my opponent, blah, 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 blah. Off rip. I'm sure people would have been a lot more forgiving of that night. But regardless, I have to go with Bo Nickel here. I would love nothing more than to see an upset of Val Woodburn. You know what I mean? If Val Woodburn goes out there and fucking flying knee KOs Bo Nickel, right? Everybody knows he's going for a takedown. The only problem, and honestly, he's kind of predictable in this sense. He always tries to strike first. Bo Nickel, that is. Because he knows that his opponents know that that Bo wants to take them down. You know what I mean? And it happened in the Contender Series. You saw him land a pretty big overhand right. He threw a fucking horrendous head kick that put him on his feet because he slipped and was off balance after throwing it in his last fight and against Jamie Pickett. I think he'll come out and try to strike for like a second and then he'll shoot. But if Val Woodburn can time a fucking knee up the middle, I would love that, dude. Biggest favorite in UFC history. Or so they've said, but regardless, dude, don't matter. Fucking Bo Nickel's probably gonna submit him. I hope I'm wrong, but it is what it is. Moving on up, Jalen Turner versus Dan, the real Slim Shady hooker, dude. Well, the real Slim Shady, please stand up. I don't understand why somebody would bleach their hair when they already had blonde hair. That's really weird to me. But regardless, he looks like Eminem a little bit. What the fuck, dude? I'm gonna pick Dan Hooker, dude. I'm going with another underdog, man. Jalen Turner is a huge weight bully, and you know, considering he is as big as he is, and then how he was out wrestled by Gamrot the way that he was, and now Gamrot wasn't able to do a whole lot with it. And it was a very close competitive fight, but like, man, what the fuck, dude? And you know, Jalen Turner was on a very hot streak for a while, but people forget that he doesn't have the best record, and he's been around for much longer than people think. Like, people think of him as like a new guy. And while he doesn't have as many fights as Dan Hooker, he's not like some fucking young up and comer. Like, he's been around. I feel like we've kind of I feel like we've kind of seen the level that he can get to already. I feel like Dan Hooker is going to be a man on a fucking mission. Jalen Turner oftentimes when he's able to like do crazy finishes on dudes, it's because of his body type. I feel a lot of the times. Dan Hooker, obviously not nearly as tall or whatever, but he's probably like the longest, tallest lightweight that Jalen Turner has had to fight. And I could be, you know, forgetting somebody, but I just feel like his striking's not fantastic. It works because he's long and lanky and whatever. And his grappling, same sort of thing, is not amazing, but because he's so long and lanky and has those legs and shit like that, he can control you in ways that a lot of other guys can't, and then he can find submissions off of that. Dan Hooker, though, we just saw defend, like, there were some, as fucking bitch made as Claudio Puelles is, he had Dan Hooker in some moments that a lot of guys would have tapped to, and a lot of guys wouldn't have the skill or the knowledge or the composure to defend those submissions, fight out of them, and then beat the fuck out of you. You know what I mean? So I'm pretty confident that Dan Hooker is not going to get submitted by Jalen Turner. Dan Hooker has very underrated ground game. I know that Islam Makhachev dealt with him quite handedly, but that's a different kind of grappling. Like, Dan Hooker's got very good jiu-jitsu. He's got good submissions of his own. And I think that his striking is much better than Jalen Turner's. And I do think also, I know Dan Hooker's took some losses lately, but if you look at the guys that he's lost to, and I'm going to also make an excuse for him, which I don't really like to do, but, you know, before the Chandler fight, he had back-to-back wars, unless I'm forgetting a fight, with Paul Felder and Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier might be one of the hardest hitting 155ers on the planet. Paul Felder was a savage in his own right, despite how cringy he is now. I just think that he had probably taken so much fucking damage that Michael Chandler was able to finish him like that. And I think that if they were to fight 10 times, I think Dan Hooker would definitely get quite a few wins on him. You know, but regardless, he's fighting guys that are at like the top of the division, and those are the guys that he's losing to. I don't think he ever should have dropped weight to fight Arnold Allen. I think that was a horrible mistake. And I think that lightweight is where he should be. I don't know, man. Jalen Turner's he's not too big of a favorite that it wouldn't be like worth betting on or anything, right? Minus 250. And I can understand where the odds makers are coming from, because Dan Hooker in his last few has taken quite a few losses. I'm gonna go with Dan Hooker, new mythical fighter, right? The tatted up, real Slim Shady Dan Hooker, dude. It's gotta be something. There's something there, right? The tatted up, real Slim Shady Dan Hooker is gonna be the new mythical fighter. He will beat Jalen Turner, and I don't know how. Probably not by finish, but I do trust in him, or at least I'm hoping so. I like Dan Hooker. He's a funny guy. Moving on up to the feature bout, Robert Whittaker versus Dricus du Plessis. Now, Robert Whittaker is a massive favorite here, at least on the UFC's website. He's at a minus 410, okay? Dricus du Plessis plus 310. You guys already know. If you've seen on any of my videos on this fight, you know which way I'm leaning. And, you know, a lot of people, like South African dudes, get offended because the annoying thing is that I understand where they're coming from, but they don't articulate their arguments very well. Does Dricus du Plessis have a chance to win this fight? Abso-fucking-lutely. Right? Absolutely he does. Right? He could land that big right hand. He could land a big left hook. Like, he could knock out Robert Whittaker. I think that's his only chance. His only path to victory is if he were to knock out Robert Whittaker, which makes things a little bit harder for him, because that means he's going to have to land like a perfect punch. But whenever the South African, the Dricus stands, argue in the comment section, all they say is like, you don't know Dricus, he won't quit. Okay, well, neither will Robert Whittaker. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're just bad arguments, and that's why it's annoying. But, you know, Robert Whittaker, it's not like he doesn't not get hit from time to time. Now, in his last few, he's gotten hit very little compared to, or relative to, the amount of times he has hit his opponent. Right, Marvin Vettori, Kelvin Gastelum, all these guys, they were able to land shots on him from time to time, but they were few and far between. So, you know, du Plessis has a chance. He could sleep Whittaker, or he could hurt him on the feet and finish him off, right? Robert Whittaker sometimes appears to be like a little bit chinny, not fully, but like half chinny, okay? Again, if you've seen any of my videos, du Plessis overreacts to feints like fucking crazy, and Robert Whittaker is a master feinter. Like a master at it. And he doesn't just feint for the sake of feinting. He's not feinting to look cool. He's feinting to set you up, and he will set you up, and he will hit you. And that's a fact. I think Whittaker's going to open up with hard hopping side kicks to the knee of Dricus du Plessis. And I know that that's like not a crazy prediction, because he does that quite frequently against a lot of opponents. But I think that he's going to do it real hard on Dricus du Plessis. Dricus du Plessis, stands a little weird also. I just think that, man, like, I think Whittaker's going to hurt his knee early in the first round. Maybe not like tear it up, but to the point where it's harder for du Plessis to move around on it. I think that Whittaker's just going to out-feint him and pick him apart at range. And like somebody in the comment section said yesterday, which was an attempt at a better argument, Dricus du Plessis is not going to give Robert Whittaker the space to throw that combination, right? Like the head kick or whatever on Vettori. And then he said Vettori doesn't punch. And I just thought, okay, well, he does, number one. But number two, the reason why Vettori wasn't punching that much is because he was frozen with feints. Also, Robert Whittaker does not need you to give him space. He doesn't need a freebie. He doesn't need a handout. He don't need no fucking charity from his opponents. He will make the space. Okay, and that's something that he's very good at. And not just that, he'll be making the space, right, which implies that he'll be moving backwards to get away from Du Plessis to make more space. Something else that Robert Whittaker is very good at that not a lot of guys are good at is fighting both moving forward or neutral and backwards. Right, Robert Whittaker, the finishing sequence on Derek Brunson was a left hook moving backwards. He's done this time and time again. And again, dude, I'm not trying to shit on Dricus Du Plessis. I'm a fan of Dricus. I don't like he's a good fighter. He's a cool dude. You know, the fact that Derek Brunson almost finished him in the first round at 40 years of age is not impressive. Okay, and I get that he got the finish towards the end of the fight, right? The corner threw in the towel at the end of round 2 for Derek Brunson. But dude, at 40 years old, you almost got finished by Derek Brunson due to strikes, right? And then a takedown, or the takedown and then strikes after the fact, after you got up. And you were gassed after that. Robert Whittaker dispatched a Brunson within a round, barely getting touched, right? Robert Whittaker dispatched of Brad Tavares in a round, barely getting touched. Like, I just don't see it for Du Plessis, man. He's he's sloppy. He is. And it's not just when he gets tired. He is sloppy. He just is, dude. Stop getting offended. Look at it for what it is. Say that your guy has a chance. He can knock him out. He might prove us all wrong. Who knows? I just don't think so. I think Robert Whittaker gets the job done. I think either by 30-27 absolute fucking schooling or even a late TKO. Right, like round 3. I think maybe that head kick finally lands a little cleaner than it had been in the earlier 2 rounds. Dricus Du Plessis gassed out. Dricus Du Plessis gets wobbled. Robert Whittaker follows up with his heat-seeking missiles that he has in his hands, because they are heat-seeking missiles. Not that they're going to blow your chin off, but they are accurate as fucking all get out. Okay? And I think that Robert Whittaker gets the job done. By decision or late. 3rd round TKO. Moving on, co-main event, Brandon Moreno versus Alejandro Pantoja. It's crazy to me that Alejandro Pantoja, or Alexandre, I don't know how the fuck you say his name, Alexandre Pantoja, whatever, dude, is Pantoja, I don't know, is plus 165. Because he's beat Brandon Moreno twice. The only problem is, so I am going to pick Brandon Moreno. I don't understand how he's a 2-1 favorite, but I think that Brandon Moreno, it's been 6 years. Or something along those lines. Maybe 5 years. I can't remember. Let me check my notes one moment. 5 years. Half a decade since he lost to Pantoja. Okay? Which, you know, is a long time. Gives you a lot of room to improve. And his grappling has clearly improved. He strangled Figueiredo. You know what I mean? I feel it would almost be smarter to pick Pantoja because he's beat him twice. And he's choked him out, what, both times? One was on the Ultimate Fighter, so it was an exhibition bout, but still. I just think Brandon Moreno's really fucking good now, man. Really good. I think he's very good keeping range. He's extremely tough. His striking is very clean and crisp. He's like the only guy to not get KO'd by Deiveson Figueiredo. Or not the only, but you know what I mean. And subbed him, which Deiveson Figueiredo is very good on the ground and has gotten some nasty subs on dudes. So it's very impressive to me to watch Brandon Moreno not do that, meaning get finished. And hold on, sorry, 1 second, dude. I'm trying to just pull something up here. Apparently, I don't know how to spell Deiveson. Why would Francisco Figueiredo come up before Deiveson Figueiredo? That seems ridiculous to me, but regardless. Right, Figueiredo's only lost 3 times then. Doctor stoppage to Moreno. Rear naked choke to Moreno. Jussier Formiga a little while ago. But he won a decision over Pantoja. Or Pantoja, whatever the fuck, dude. I'm just repeating myself at this point. I just think that Brandon Moreno has improved enough to not get finished by Pantoja, because again, 5 fucking years ago, dude. And it was a decision. He got choked out on the Ultimate Fighter, which was 2 years before that. 7 years ago. So while it's a, it could potentially be a decent indicator of how the fight will go, I don't know that it's going to be the most accurate way to look at things, because it's just been such a long time. Brandon Moreno's got a lot of experience, and unfortunately, he's only fought one fucking guy at the top of the division, really, 3 times, aside from Kai France, which actually is very impressive also. I think Brandon Moreno's going to get the job done. I keep second guessing myself because Pantoja is very good. And I could see like a world where he strangles him again, or is able to control him on the ground. But there were times when Figueiredo had Moreno on the ground and he was able to get out of bad situations. I'm just going to look up Pantoja. Sorry, I'm doing this on the fly. This is one of the ones where I'm kind of shooting from the hip here. Right, so he's beat Alex Perez. He beat Brandon Royval, which is extremely impressive. He lost to Askar Askarov. He lost to Figueiredo. Yeah. Fuck, man. That's a tricky one. Very tricky one. Pantoja is a savage, dude. And he's very good. And MMA math doesn't work because, he lost to Figueiredo, but Brandon Moreno beat Figueiredo and blah, 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 blah. He's also 33 years old, though. Brandon Moreno's 29 in the prime of his career. I think Pantoja's kind of... That's the age, especially at flyweight, where you're kind of on the way out. This is like his last hurrah. Not that it's his last fight, but kind of most likely going to be his last chance at winning a title. I'm going to go with Brandon Moreno, man. I think Brandon Moreno is going to be able to stay away from any submission threat. I think he's improved leaps and bounds on the ground. I think his striking has improved leaps and bounds. His jab is very nice, pardon me. His body kicks are phenomenal. A lot of shit that he does very well. A lot of shit. I think a lot of this is going to be like a mental aspect. If Brandon Moreno can get over the fact that he's fighting a guy who has beat him twice, he should be fine. You know what I mean? However, if I was betting, I would probably throw some money on Alejandro Pantoja. I don't know why I'm saying it like that, dude. Alexandre Pantoja. I don't know how to I would throw some money on Pantoja. Sorry, dude. I'm getting worn out, man. We're almost 40 minutes into this video, and I am fucking exhausted, okay? If I was going to bet, I would throw some money on Pantoja, I think, because Brandon Moreno, 2-1 favorite, lost to the same guy twice. It has been a while, but still. You know what I mean? Still. Moving on up. Main event time. That was very fucking not well done. That last one, I apologize for that. I knew more about the feature fight and the fight before that than I did about the co-main event. I apologize sincerely. Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez. The odds makers, I don't think, are being... I understand that a lot of it is respect for Alexander Volkanovski and what he's done and who he's beaten and how he's beaten them, and even his only fucking loss as of recently, how he lost it, the fact that he almost won, and a lot of people think he did win. I understand all that, but I think that the odds makers maybe don't factor in style so much, and Yair Rodriguez's style being completely fucking different. Now, Volkanovski, as per usual, his camp, and I said this, Joe Lopez is a fucking mastermind, and something that his camp is very good at is bringing in guys to emulate their opponents. And I understand that nobody can emulate Yair Rodriguez the same way, though, that nobody can really emulate Islam Makhachev, but Craig Jones did a good enough job. You know what I mean? So they're very good at picking guys who can come in there and give them looks that their opponent are going to give them. Oh, dude. Yair Rodriguez's custom belt. I get that a lot of people think it's cringe and they're saying it's not his belt. It's not his belt, blah, blah, blah. It is his belt, right? He won the interim championship. I understand that he's not a champion, and it's cringe that the UFC doesn't acknowledge that in any of their fucking posts, right? The whole media push behind the Mexican market with Moreno, Grasso, and Jair Rodriguez. They have not mentioned one fucking time that Jair Rodriguez is not the undisputed champion, but I digress. The custom belt thing is cool, and I bet you that there were a fuck ton of champions that looked at that and went, wait, we can do that? Because you know what, dude? I had never thought of that. Not a single fucking time. And it irritates me that I didn't become a UFC champion, because I would have gotten one with alligator skin. That's what I would have done. And then if I had won another one, I would have got rattlesnake skin. I would have got some fucking dope ass shit, dude, like that. And I hope to God we see somebody do some crazy shit like that. But I digress. That has nothing to do with the fight. I trust that the guys that Volkanovski brought in will be able to do a good enough job at emulating certain things that Yair Rodriguez does. Maybe not with the same spontaneousness, not with the same explosiveness. Pardon me, dude. I just sounded like Mike Tyson there. I do think Volkanovski is going to be able to crowd Yair though enough to not allow him to get his kicks off to the extent that he wants to, with the same level of power, with the same danger. I think Volkanovski will probably go back to Volkanovski of old. I think he's going to be trying to take him down and smish, you know what I mean? Like old school Volk rugby style. And I think that Yair Rodriguez is not going to be able to latch up a triangle on Alexander Volkanovski the way that he was able to on Josh Emmett, because Alexander Volkanovski's grappling is extremely underrated, because his grappling coach is one of the best in the fucking world, and he's been working with him for I think 3 years now, and that's a pretty good chunk of time. And especially like Craig Jones has really taken on the role of a coach since they're split from the Danaher Death Squad, and he studies a lot of other martial arts as well as jiu-jitsu, and I think that he's a very unique jiu-jitsu coach in the sense that he can take jiu-jitsu and change it so that it is actually applicable to MMA, and I think that he does a very good job at that. And I think that Volkanovski is probably, you know, his star pupil in that sense, like especially seeing the way that he handled himself against Islam Makhachev on the ground, whereas nobody else has been able to do that prior. I think that that's a pretty good indicator that they're doing something correct. Yair Rodriguez obviously has a chance, man. He could head kick Volkanovski. We've seen Volkanovski get dropped by a head kick against Max Holloway, of all people, who, now maybe this plays into it, but Max Holloway is not known for a kicker. That's not something that he typically does. He's a boxer. So maybe the, like, shock factor was there, right? Like, he wasn't expecting Holloway to throw a fucking kick, but then he did. The problem I have with that is that, and I know that a head kick could basically put down anybody, Max Holloway does not throw with the same level of power or explosiveness as Yair Rodriguez does. And I think that if Holloway can set up a kick on Volk, while Holloway might be better at actually setting things up with like a, I don't know, like systemically, right? Like if he knows, like if I do this, then this, Volk will do this, and then I can throw this, like something like that. Whereas Yair Rodriguez, I would imagine, is doing shit on the fly. He's not like, oh, if I feint this way and then that way and then this way and then that way and then I throw a leg kick, he'll do this and then I can do that. I feel like Holloway might do that a little bit. I just think if Holloway can land a head kick on you and drop you with a head kick when his kicks, whenever Holloway throws a spinning back kick, it makes me laugh because they don't have pop on them. And they're supposed to. Spinning back kicks are the hardest. Like, I've broken, and I'm not saying this to sound like a fucking tough guy or whatever the fuck. I have broken 2 heavy bag chains, and both times were with a spinning back kick. And, like, it's the hardest kick because you've got all the torque and the momentum and everything behind it. And when Holloway throws it, it just makes me laugh. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have power, man. He just doesn't. And everybody knows this. He's a volume fighter, but if Holloway could drop you with a fucking head kick, if Yair Rodriguez hits you with a fucking head kick, dude, you're out cold. I would imagine, right? If he hits you clean with a head kick, you're out cold. And Volk's short, so Yair Rodriguez doesn't have to get his leg very high up. and I'm not trying to shit on my short kings out there, but I just mean relative, right? It's a lot easier if you get a 5'6" guy who dips an inch, and you get a 5'10" guy that dips an inch. It's way easier to kick the 5'6" guy in the head, obviously, because it's like kicking to your shoulder as opposed to kicking to your head. And I think Yair Rodriguez is going to come out like a bat out of fucking hell, dude. That's another thing, too. His aggressiveness is very different than anything else. Like, a lot of guys take their time, try to make reads, shit like this. Yair Rodriguez doesn't really do that. He comes out fucking full hog. And I like his mentality leading up to it. He seems to be very calm and collected, and he's not, like, overwhelmed by the moment. I just think Volk's too fucking good, man. The only problem I have is that he keeps talking about Islam and the Islam rematch, and then he'll say that he's not overlooking Yair Rodriguez, and I just feel like he might be. You know what I mean? Which is fine, because he's confident in his abilities, and I'm sure that, you know, it was cool too. I mentioned how I would imagine that Yair Rodriguez is a very hard guy to pick up patterns on when watching film, and Volk acknowledged that exact thing at the press conference, or at media day, sorry. They asked him, you know, you brought guys in to emulate, but do you think that it, like, have you found any holes or whatever, like, blah, blah, and he says he's a very hard guy to like pick stuff out on, because he does so much stuff differently all the time. There's no like real set pattern to how he does shit, you know what I mean? And yeah, I just think that Alexander Volkanovski is way too good, man. Am I saying Yair Rodriguez has no chance? Absolutely fucking not. Right now, if I was to actually like put a percentage point on it too, it would probably be like 60-40. Like, Yair Rodriguez has a chance, man. But Volk's right, dude. He's not Josh Emmett. And, you know, leading up to that fight, I seriously degraded Josh Emmett. I said that I don't think he should be fighting for an interim title. I don't think he's that good. I think that a bunch of his wins, or at least a couple of his wins that were at the highest level, or at a high level, which gave him like the ranking that he had, which would enable him to get an interim title shot, were robbery decisions, because he doesn't really hit you, he hits your shoulder, but because it sounds so hard, people think that he's done something, and it drives me fucking crazy. And I've shat on Josh Emmett a lot. I don't think he's that good. You know what I mean? So, yes, the performance Yair Rodriguez put on against him was extremely impressive, but it's lessened, it's cheapened, because it was an old fucking Trollbridge Josh Emmett. You know what I mean? So I have to go with Volkanovski. Tried and true. Fucking proven. Brian Ortega, Max Holloway ×3, Korean Zombie. Like, the guys that he has beaten, the way that he has beaten them is more than impressive. And I think he's the greatest featherweight of all time. Not that I really, like, pay attention to any of those fucking conversations, but Jesus Christ, man. The guy's incredible. And at this point, like, it would be, you know, unless you're an ultra fan of Yair Rodriguez, well, I'm not even going to say that, man. It's just hard to pick against Volkanovski. And even if you are somebody who is picking Yair Rodriguez, I'm sure that you could acknowledge as much. Anyways, dude, that's all I've got for this preview, picks and preview. UFC 290 tomorrow night. Can't fucking wait. Hope y'all enjoy yourselves. I will be back here for the recap, as usual. I may even do a video tomorrow morning. Who knows? Regardless, I appreciate all your patience. I'm sorry that I have been very inactive relative to what I'm usually doing because of the move and whatever, but it is what it is, man. We're almost done. So, like and subscribe. Greatly appreciate it. See you at the next one. Bye-bye.